headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Board's January 18, 2026, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pushing back hard on President Trump's new Gaza peace framework. His office says the proposed Gaza Executive Board was drawn up without coordination with Israel and contradicts Israeli policy on who controls Gaza's future. Israel's national security minister is going further, calling for a full return to war with enormous force, highlighting a sharp rift between Washington's ceasefire plan and Israel's current government. Dr. Mehmet Oz says what Americans are seeing in Minnesota is only the start of a much larger scandal. He argues that in California's hospice and home health system, there is wholesale cultural malfeasance, with suspected fraud near $4 billion. If proven, it would be one of the biggest healthcare fraud cases in U.S. history, harming the sick and elderly while taxpayers pay the bill. Investigative reporter John Solomon says a serious accountability phase is about to hit Washington. He reports that within the next week to 10 days, there could be major developments in a long-running probe into abuses inside the FBI and DOJ. Solomon says a special prosecutor may be named, opening the door to indictments in jurisdictions beyond the D.C. bubble. Commentator Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes is back in the spotlight over former President Trump's kavef tweet. She claims the word has a biblical root meaning, "in the end we win," and uses it as a symbol for a long fight against corruption, censorship, and global power structures. Her core message to viewers is to stay steady and not lose hope, because she believes the outcome is not yet settled. Trump advisor Stephen Miller is blasting Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz over the ICE crackdown. Miller says they have effectively allowed violence against federal officers because mass migration and weak enforcement are central to their party's political plans. He argues that the unrest in Minnesota is not random at all, but part of a broader strategy to reshape the electorate. The White House is putting elite forces on alert as Minnesota unrest escalates. Reports say President Trump has ordered units of the historic 11th Airborne Division to standby status as riots around ICE enforcement continue. Officials emphasize that troops have not yet deployed, but the move signals the federal government is ready to act if local leaders fail to restore order. In Colorado, an appeals panel is questioning the 9-year prison term given to Tina Peters, a pro-Trump clerk who exposed vulnerabilities in her county's election systems. During arguments, judges asked whether her political speech and her focus on election integrity were improperly used to justify such a stiff sentence. The scrutiny raises the possibility that her punishment could be reduced. China is sending a new warning to Taiwan. Recent military drills reportedly rehearsed a decapitation strike, practicing a rapid operation to neutralize Taiwan's leadership using drones and special forces. Taipei has raised its alert level and is pressing Washington for stronger, concrete support to deter any real-world attack. In Virginia, Democrat Jay Jones has taken the oath as Attorney General, but controversy is not going away. He is still under fire over earlier leaked text messages where he fantasized about the death of a Republican lawmaker and his children, comments he later tried to walk back. Critics say putting him in charge of law enforcement sends the wrong message about political threats and violence. Outside the federal building in Minneapolis, protests against ICE turned ugly. Witnesses and footage show anti-ICE demonstrators allegedly attacking federal agents with thrown objects and flagpoles as officers pulled back. The clashes are fueling fresh debate about which side is driving political violence in America's streets. Retired Major General Jasper Jeffers, a veteran U.S. commander who helped broker an Israel-Lebanon ceasefire, has been chosen to lead the Gaza International Stabilization Force. Supporters say his experience gives him credibility with both militaries and diplomats. Skeptics fear the mission may freeze the status quo rather than deliver a real solution for Gaza. President Trump's proposed Board of Peace is already dividing world leaders. Reports say nations that want permanent seats must pay $1 billion each, a condition Prime Minister Netanyahu is rejecting. Trump's backers counter that major players should invest real money if they want lasting influence over global security decisions. Globalist activist Alexander Soros is promoting an essay claiming Trump is pushing the world closer to China. The piece argues that America First policies are driving allies into Beijing's arms. The tone from the establishment crowd is clear. They are more afraid of Trump's agenda than of China's social credit and surveillance system. The CIA is launching a fresh recruitment drive, using public messaging that asks, "Ready to turn your curiosity into real-world impact?" The agency is pushing internships and analysis jobs to young Americans online, even as many citizens worry the intelligence community has been weaponized in domestic politics. A new Calm Before the Storm video series tied to Q research is making the rounds again. It revisits years of crowdsourced digging into corruption, wars, and media narratives. Supporters see it as citizen counterintelligence. Legacy outlets still brush it off as conspiracy without engaging the underlying claims. Several tech workers in Minneapolis say they were chased and harassed by anti-ICE protesters who thought they were federal agents, simply because they were masculine white men. The story shows how quickly mob politics can target ordinary people based on looks and assumptions, not facts. Online activists are pointing viewers to the U.S. Debt Clock site and a linked New Money Revolution PDF. The document urges Americans to prepare for a possible reset of the current debt-driven financial system and rethink how currency, credit, and national sovereignty operate. Former central banker Mark Carney is the subject of a viral piece titled "The New World Order is Dead." Analysts say his calls for a revamped global financial framework sound more like damage control than confidence, as public trust in elite-managed systems continues to erode. In Maine, Secretary of State Shenna Bellows has halted new confidential license plates for federal agencies after Border Patrol sought extra protection. She claims current plates could be used for lawless purposes, but critics warn her move will expose where federal officers live and work, just as an ICE surge is rumored. New video from Minneapolis shows January 6th, pardonee Jake Lang being tackled, beaten, and chased by an anti-ICE mob before he drives off as protesters pound on his car. The images are driving demands that federal prosecutors pursue these attackers with the same intensity they used against January 6 defendants. Former President Trump is condemning the violence around ICE protests, saying every attacker should be arrested and that there must be a big price to pay. His supporters argue that if left-wing mobs are not prosecuted, the idea of equal justice under the law will continue to collapse. Trump is also defending one of America's most cherished sports traditions, the Army-Navy football game. He warns that expanded playoffs and television deals are pushing it to the sidelines. Trump vows that, under his leadership, the game will be protected as a symbol of patriotism and service. On Capitol Hill, conservatives warn that Democrats plan to reverse all the DOGE tax cuts and sharply hike spending if they win the midterms. They say the left now has the votes to kill the filibuster and are urging Republican leader John Thune to move first with reforms before Democrats rewrite the rules. Trump is praising Louisiana Congresswoman Julia Letlow as a rising America First star and says he is hearing she may run for the U.S. Senate. He reminds supporters that he has carried Louisiana in multiple elections and signals that he would strongly back her if she enters the race. The Department of War is spotlighting joint exercises with Japan's ground self-defense force, calling them vital to rebuilding deterrence in the Pacific. At a time when China is ramping up pressure around Taiwan, U.S. leaders are tightening military cooperation with key regional allies. NATO's Operation Arctic Endurance is now underway in Greenland, with Allied troops training in harsh polar conditions. The drills follow earlier U.S. interest in buying Greenland, and they send a message that the island's strategic position in the Arctic is not being ignored. In California, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell is under fire for comments about how he would treat ICE agents if he were governor. He suggested revoking their driver's licenses and even hinted at possible charges, a stance critics say amounts to open warfare on federal law enforcement. New York City's massive public hospital system, with 11 hospitals and 5 nursing homes and a budget over $12 billion, is facing growing scrutiny. Whistleblowers and watchdogs say its size and complexity make it an easy vehicle for mismanagement, political favors, and wasted funds. After meeting with Club for Growth's David McIntosh, Trump says the two will work tirelessly to defeat Indiana Senate Majority Leader Rod Bray. He labels Bray a rhino who betrayed the movement, a warning shot that Republicans who cross America First priorities can expect serious primary challenges. In Washington, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is drawing outrage for calling the country the U.S. goddamn states during an ICE-related hearing. The comment set off a wave of backlash, with many saying if she despises the United States that much, she should not be writing its laws. Senator Josh Hawley says the Biden administration has been quietly directing millions to CARE, an Islamist organization that some states now label a terrorist group. Hawley is demanding a full accounting of every grant and contract, warning that U.S. taxpayers may be funding groups hostile to American values. Grassroots conservatives are angry that some Republicans are wavering on the SAVE Act, which would require proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections. Activists argue that if the GOP cannot even commit to clean voter rolls, they are effectively handing long-term control of the country to the left. A number of Christian scholars are stepping up their criticism of theistic evolution, the idea that God used Darwinian evolution as his tool. They say this view undermines biblical teaching on Adam, sin, and redemption, and they are urging churches to return to a clear, straightforward view of creation.
At shop.isawaya.com, everything you buy supports Qnotables, the place where people talk freely no matter what. Check out our Qn honey pot, a jar of yummy honey that's as strong as your voice. Put it on toaster and tea. It's not just honey, it's freedom in every bite. Then there's Qn butter, a smooth handmade skin cream that makes you feel good while you fight for what's right. Awesome wood and pieces for display only. Hang them up or set them out. They're for showing off Qn's tough spirit. Want to help even more? Get a proto membership. So go to shop.isawaya.com now and grab some goodies. Help Qn.top keep free speech alive, and let's keep the ideas flowing loud and free.
Looking for a fast way to track what's moving online right now? Head over to Qnotables.com. It's a centralized index of notable clips, headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Boards, January 18, 2026. U.S. Central Command reports that American forces have eliminated a key al-Qaeda-linked leader tied to an ISIS ambush that killed U.S. troops in Syria. Officials say the operation is a reminder that anyone who spills American blood will be hunted down, no matter how long it takes. Mourning is underway for Princess Irene of Greece and Denmark, who has passed away. She was part of an older generation of European royalty, known more for quiet charity work and family ties than for political power, as monarchies shifted into largely symbolic roles. Dan Bongino has returned to the fight with a sharp message to what he calls liberal media children. In a blunt, profanity-laced post, he declared he is back on air and not interested in playing nice, accusing corporate media of lying to the public and smearing conservatives. The Iranian regime is working to cut the country off from the open internet and move everyone onto a tightly controlled national network. Critics warn that this will lock in heavy censorship, block outside information, and make it even riskier for dissidents to communicate with the outside world. EU ambassadors have been summoned to Brussels for an emergency Sunday meeting. diplomats are bracing for new shocks on energy, war, or migration, as pressure mounts and the gap grows between EU institutions and frustrated voters across the continent. The Promethean Action Account is warning that today's leaders have no plan for the crises they created. The message points to exploding debt, open borders, and cultural breakdown, accusing ruling elites of improvising day to day instead of offering a real, long-term path forward. Online analysts say major events and images now amount to huge QCOMs in plain sight. They argue that certain speeches, photos, and dates line up too neatly to be random, and they urge viewers to watch patterns that mainstream outlets refuse to discuss. The Jake Lang Minneapolis op is ongoing, with supporters staging protests and legal campaigns tied to ICE and January 6th prosecutions. Backers say Lang's case exposes double standards and political punishment. Critics accuse the movement of provoking standoffs with law enforcement. In Virginia, lawmakers have approved a measure pushing forward redistricting reform. Supporters say it should curb gerrymandering and make districts more fair. Skeptics say the process can still be manipulated in back rooms by attorneys and consultants from both parties. New Governor Abigail Spanberger has quickly reversed her predecessor Glenn Youngkin's order that local law enforcement must cooperate with ICE. The move marks a clear shift towards softer immigration enforcement in Virginia, and sheriffs warn it will be harder to remove criminal illegal aliens from their communities. A new analysis argues America is moving from an income tax model to a leverage-based system. It says cheap credit, asset bubbles, and complex financial products have quietly replaced honest wages as the main driver of wealth, leaving ordinary families stuck in permanent debt while insiders profit. Trump says he is suing J.P. Morgan Chase for cutting him off after January 6th. He claims the bank punished him for his politics, and his supporters say discovery in the case will show how big financial institutions use access to banking as a weapon against people they dislike. A documentary called Q the Series, Episode 1, There Is No QAnon, is trying to separate original Q drops from the media label QAnon. The film argues the term was invented to smear a broad anti-corruption movement and reduce it to a single caricature. Trump is threatening tariffs on 8 European nations over disputes involving Greenland. He says if Europe wants U.S. protection and market access, it cannot block serious talks on Arctic territory and resources that matter to both security and energy policy. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is warning Trump to stay away from Greenland, hinting that any move to change its status could bring a confrontation. The tough rhetoric shows how strongly Western elites intend to hold on to control of Arctic routes and resources. Investor Nat Rothschild is praising reporting that Greenlanders are speaking out against long-standing Danish rule. The coverage highlights rising anger on the island over decisions made in Copenhagen and fuels debate over autonomy and who benefits from Greenland's natural wealth. In Canada, crowds have formed for the signing of an Alberta Independence Declaration, described by some as jaw-dropping. The turnout reflects deep frustration in Western Canada with Ottawa's handling of energy policy, farming, and regional concerns. Commentator Kirill Dmitriev is sharing an old clip of Daddy Trump and EU leaders, saying it has aged well. He points out that Trump's warnings on energy dependence, migration, and NATO spending were mocked at the time, but many of those concerns have since proven correct. Trump says the United States has effectively subsidized Denmark and the rest of the EU for years by not charging real tariffs on their exports. He argues that era is over, insisting that if Europe wants continued security guarantees, it must accept fair trade rather than one-way benefits. In another post, Trump mocks critics focused on the auto pen, saying his opponents never truly won the presidency in the first place. He calls the 2020 election rigged and warns there must be a serious price for those who use the flawed process to seize power. National Guard units are moving into position around Minneapolis as protests and riots tied to ICE escalate. Officials say the deployment is meant to prevent more violence, protect federal buildings, and reassure citizens who feel caught between radical activists and hesitant local leadership. The U.S. Space and Rocket Center is gearing up for its third annual AI Symposium. The meeting will bring together defense planners, scientists, and industry to discuss how artificial intelligence is changing everything from satellite control to missile defense. U.S. lawmakers held a full press conference pushing back on Trump's idea of seizing Greenland, warning it could strain NATO and spark a diplomatic showdown. They argue Arctic sovereignty should not be changed without broad agreement among allies. Space Force's STARCOM has released its commander's strategic vision, detailing how space assets will support land, sea, and air forces. The plan stresses quicker launches, resilient constellations, and firm responses to hostile moves in orbit. Live streamer Portland Andy continues to cover protests and political events across the country. His unedited footage, shot from the ground, offers viewers a raw look at marches, police lines, and clashes that often look very different from polished network clips. In Seattle, a criminal illegal alien who rammed ICE vehicles head-on last year has walked free. The case is fueling anger over lenient prosecutors and judges who, critics say, put ideology and politics ahead of basic public safety. Commentator Pete Hegseth says he plans to take a sledgehammer to expensive DEI programs, including federal initiatives like 8A. He argues these efforts waste taxpayer money, divide people by race, and distract the military and government from winning wars and serving citizens. A UK employment tribunal has ruled in favor of an employee who insisted on speaking plainly about biological sex. The decision is being hailed as a victory for common sense and free speech, pushing back against policies that punish people for acknowledging basic male-female differences. The Trump administration says banks will soon roll out Trump cards with a hard 10% interest cap. Supporters say the product would give families a simple, predictable option compared with the high-rate, fine-print traps common in today's credit market. Fresh data on Pennsylvania's puberty blocker spending is raising alarms. Critics say the numbers show minors were turned into revenue streams for powerful medical interests, with too little concern for long-term health, risk, or genuine informed consent. A new report titled "The $134 Billion Betrayal" digs into Elon Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI. It accuses the company of drifting far from its original mission and turning a public benefit AI vision into a massive private windfall for a few insiders. The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to review a Roundup weed killer case involving Bayer. Legal experts say the ruling could reshape how much liability companies face for alleged long-term harms of products that regulators approved years ago. Commentators are reaching back to the old pattern of hubris, atis, nemesis, and tysis to describe today's ruling class. The warning is that arrogance leads to blindness, then to payback, and finally to collapse. A reminder that a people destroyed for lack of knowledge rarely see it coming. After Netanyahu criticized Trump's Gaza Board of Peace, Israeli Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir openly called for returning to war with overwhelming force. The internal split in Jerusalem highlights a fierce debate over whether to accept U.S.-backed arrangements or keep pressing militarily for total control. NATO partners could soon face tariffs rising toward 25% until they agree to a Greenland deal with Washington. The threat is meant to push European capitals to take negotiations seriously and to stop assuming U.S. defense will always come with no economic cost. Gun rights advocates are watching a proposed rule change that could end the nearly century-old ban on mailing handguns. Supporters say updating the law would reflect modern shipping and background checks. Critics warn it could increase access to firearms in ways they oppose. U.S. Central Command has welcomed new efforts by all sides in Syria to prevent escalation and seek dialogue. The statement shows Washington wants to avoid a larger war in the region while still safeguarding American troops and allies on the ground.
Every voice matters. The power of free speech is more important than ever. Imagine a place where you can share your thoughts freely, explore new ideas, and engage in meaningful conversations anonymously. With online anonymity, you can express yourself without fear of judgment. It's about freedom, creativity, and connection. Join the conversation that matters. Embrace your voice. Celebrate your freedom. Visit 8kun.top today. That's 8kun.top.
Looking for a fast way to track what's moving online right now? Head over to Qnotables.com. It's a centralized index of notable clips, headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Board's January 18th, 2026, the White House posted a simple birthday message for a cabinet member. No cake, just steak. Happy birthday, Sec. Kennedy. The low-key greeting fits the administration's effort to project a more blue-collar, working man style instead of high-end DC parties. Whistleblower Elizabeth Phillips says she can't unsee what she's seen as she describes what she calls decades of systemic child abuse at Camp Kanakuk. Her detailed account is adding fuel to demands for outside investigations into powerful ministries and youth camps. The Department of Labor says 2026 is going to be historic, promising that efforts to bring back jobs and rebuild a strong middle class are just getting started. Officials point to reshoring, apprenticeships, and domestic manufacturing as pillars of that push. Kirill Dmitriev is hinting at a Q-storm Delta arriving tomorrow and says transatlantic unity under globalist leadership is finished. He predicts this breakdown will open space for nationalist, populist movements on both sides of the Atlantic. First Lady Melania Trump's message, "Curiosity for intellectual freedom," is circulating again. She urges Americans to read widely, question what they are told, and use AI as a tool while keeping their own independent judgment at the center. The FDA has removed earlier web content that claimed cell phones are harmless, while health officials launch a new study on long-term radiation exposure. The reversal has many asking why earlier assurances were presented as settled fact. A 28-year-old Staten Island man is back on U.S. soil after being released from a Venezuelan prison. His freedom follows intense diplomatic pressure and renewed attention on Americans detained by hostile foreign regimes. Documents now show hundreds of Greenlandic women and girls were forcibly given contraception between 1960 and 1991. The revelations have triggered anger over heavy-handed policies rooted in colonial attitudes and disregard for basic rights. Kansas City, Missouri, has enacted a 5-year ban on non-municipal detention facilities. The law targets private prisons and local detention deals, but critics warn it could strain city jails and limit flexibility in handling crime and immigration. Election experts are watching new USPS postmark rules that could affect which mail-in ballots count. Small changes in timing and labeling could decide close races, and both parties are already preparing legal challenges. Tennessee-based LIS Technologies plans to invest over $1 billion in a laser uranium enrichment plant. Backers say it will support domestic nuclear fuel and create high-tech jobs. Opponents are concerned about environmental risk and proliferation. Melania Trump's mention of MGM has sparked speculation about future media or branding projects tied to her name. Supporters see it as another sign she is carefully shaping her post-White House profile. BBC presenter Geeta Guru Murthy is facing backlash after appearing to hiss when Christian rapper DC3 said his greatest hero is Jesus Christ. Viewers say the reaction revealed open hostility toward faith inside mainstream media circles. NASA's Artemis II rollout is underway, with live coverage as America prepares to send astronauts back toward the moon. The mission is a major step toward a long-term human presence in and around lunar orbit. The Run for America effort is urging regular citizens, not career politicians, to run for office. Organizers say the country needs more people with practical experience and fewer polished insiders tied to party machines. CERN is in the news again as researchers ramp up particle physics experiments. While scientists aim to answer deep questions about the universe, critics keep asking about costs, transparency, and who ultimately controls the discoveries. Space-focused accounts are filling feeds with rocket tests, telescope images, and mission updates. Even in a divided country, there is still broad agreement that exploring space is one area where America should stay in the lead. On this date in 1781, American forces won the Battle of Cowpens in South Carolina. The victory broke British momentum in the South and showed the power of well-led militia and Continental troops fighting on their own ground. Democrat activists Jennifer Welch and Jim Acosta are talking openly about mass prosecutions of Trump and his supporters in the name of reconciliation, even suggesting expanding the Supreme Court to jail political opponents. Critics say this is textbook authoritarian thinking, not justice. Alarming reports of hospice fraud in California show dozens of providers registered to the same address, suggesting a large-scale billing scam. Investigators say the scheme appears to exploit vulnerable patients while siphoning money from Medicare and taxpayers. The National Reconnaissance Office says it will accelerate deployment of next-generation satellites and systems in 2026 and beyond. That means more detailed intelligence from orbit and fewer safe hiding places for America's adversaries. Trump is again attacking what he calls horrible radical left figures who used lawfare to try to destroy his presidency. He says many judges in New York are embarrassed by these cases and insists those behind them should pay a big price. Before leaving the White House on January 16, 2026, Trump held an informal gaggle with reporters. He fielded questions on tariffs, the border, and foreign policy, often pushing back hard on hostile questions in his usual direct style. Quoting legal analyst Greg Jarrett, Trump says he has clear constitutional authority to send troops to Minneapolis to protect ICE officers and federal property. The claim underscores a growing clash between federal power and local officials who refuse to cooperate on immigration enforcement. New York Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani is condemning ICE raids as cruel and inhumane and pledging that NYPD and city officials will stick to sanctuary policies. The standoff with Trump highlights how divided the country is over whether immigration law should actually be enforced. NASA is adopting blockchain-style tools to secure flight data and prevent tampering. The move is aimed at strengthening the integrity of mission records and provides another example of space agencies borrowing technologies first developed in the private sector. January 17, 2008, marks the death of Bobby Fischer, America's only world chess champion in Reykjavik, Iceland. His 1972 win over the Soviet champion remains one of the iconic moments of the Cold War, even as his later years were marked by controversy. At noon Eastern, Abigail Spanberger was sworn in as the 75th governor of Virginia. Voters will now watch closely to see whether she governs as the centrist she claims to be or moves in a more aggressive direction on policy. Streamer Portland Andy is back live showing events as they unfold from the street. Viewers turn to his channel to bypass edited clips and see demonstrations, confrontations, and police responses in real time. Minneapolis ICE remains a flashpoint, with supporters of enforcement saying the city is now a test case for whether federal immigration law still has teeth when local politicians push back. The outcome there may shape how future ICE operations are handled across the country. Lock-in Patriots has become a rallying phrase urging supporters to stay focused, peaceful, and organized. Organizers warn that the coming months will test not only how many people show up, but how disciplined and steady they remain under pressure. The CIA has released a public video calling on Chinese citizens to share the truth about China with U.S. intelligence. It is a rare open recruitment pitch, underscoring how vital human sources remain, even in an age dominated by satellites, data collection, and cyber tools.
Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com.
That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.